Good evening, you're watching TKC Daily, where we make sense of the global events with straight facts and sharp analysis. Tonight on the show, we are breaking down the biggest global headlines, starting with the aftermath of Trump's tariffs. China strikes back. With a 34% tariff hike, Beijing fires back at the US, wiping out some 2.5 trillions from the markets. The question that we are raising on the show tonight is that, has Trump overplayed his hand? South Korea is in chaos, President Yoon Suk Yeol is out, and the country is in deep political turmoil. What happens next? We will tell you everything. Meanwhile, Gaza tragedy continues and Israeli airstrike on a school kills 27. What does this mean for the already dire crisis? We will decode. And Modi meets Yunus, a high-stakes discussion on minority safety, Sheikh Hasina's extradition, and Bangladesh's water dispute. What's really going on? We will tell you everything. And finally, Trump's security purge. The US National Security Advisor Chief has been fired after a meeting with the far-right activist. What does this say about the future of America's intelligence agencies? We will decode. All this is lined up on the show tonight, so let's get started. Imagine waking up to find that 2.5 trillions just vanished from the global markets overnight. That's exactly what has happened in the last 24 hours. US President Donald Trump's new wave of tariffs sent shockwaves through the global economy. From the Wall Street to the Shanghai, markets saw their worst crash since the pandemic, with major companies like Apple, Nike, and Target seeing their stock prices plummet by nearly 10%, 10%. And just when things couldn't get worse, China hit back. So let's rewind a little and see what happened on Wednesday. Trump announced a fresh set of tariffs on imports from around the world, with China getting hit the hardest. The new tariffs added another 34% to existing duties, meaning Chinese goods now face a brutal 54% tariffs when entering the US. But this isn't just about China. Trump has slapped tariffs on over 60 countries, including its European allies, Mexico, and Canada. And markets did not take this news well. Within hours, the S&P 500 collapsed by 4.8%, wiping out 2 trillion in market value. The Dow Jones fell 4% and the Nasdaq plummeted 6%, its worst single-day drop in years. Asia-Pacific markets followed the US into a free fall, with Japan's Nikkei dropping 2.7%, Australia's ASX 200 dropping 1.6%, and the European markets trembling in response. Now China is reacting. If Trump thought China will stay silent, he was dead wrong. Beijing responded within 48 hours, hitting all US imports with a 34% retaliatory tariffs, a direct mirror of Trump's latest increase. But why 34%? Well, it wasn't just a random number. China's response was calculated. The 34% figure matches exactly with what Trump imposed. It's a message: if the US rises the stake, China will match blow to blow. And China didn't stop there. 11 major US companies, including tech giants and biotech firms, were placed on China's, and I quote, unreliable entities list, barring them from doing business in China. Rare earth metal exports to US were restricted, affecting industries from electric vehicles to military defense. US chicken, wheat, and soybean faced fresh bans, escalating the trade war beyond just tariffs. This tariff thing is now turning into a global trade war. European leaders condemned Trump tariffs, with French President Emmanuel Macron calling for European companies to halt investments in the US. The EU is already preparing its own retaliatory measures, while Canada announced a 25% tariffs on all US vehicles. Meanwhile, the World Trade Organization (WTO) warned that the global trade volume could shrink by 1% this year, increasing the risk of a global recession. Investors are now worried that Trump's aggressive trade policies could trigger another 2008-style financial meltdown. And at the White House, Trump remained defiant. He said, and I quote, "The markets are going to be booming. The stock prices are going to boom. The country is going to boom." But with global stocks in free fall and tensions escalating, the real question is, has Trump overplayed his hand? Think about it. South Korea is at a historic crossroads as its constitutional court has unanimously upheld the impeachment of President Yoon Suk Yeol. The ruling immediately removes him from the office, triggering a snap elections to be held by June 3. But while the court's decision brings legal closure, the political crisis gripping the country is far from over. So let's start by understanding why was Yoon impeached. Yoon was suspended in December after a shocking turn of events. What did he do? He attempted to impose martial law, ordering troops to storm parliament. He justified his extreme move by claiming that South Korea was infiltrated by North Korean and Chinese spies. However, his justification was widely dismissed, and the National Assembly swiftly impeached him, citing a blatant abuse of power. During the court hearing, acting Chief Justice Moon Hyung-wei condemned the Yoon's actions as unconstitutional. The court found that his declaration of martial law had no legal basis and directly violated the political rights of the people. Yoon, according to the ruling, had, and I quote, gone against the people he was supposed to protect. So now what? Well, the ruling has sent a ripple across South Korea. While many celebrated this decision as a victory for the democracy in South Korea, Yoon's removal has further polarized South Korea, their country. His supporters, convinced by his claims of election frauds and foreign infiltration, have taken to streets in protest, wearing, and I quote here, "Stop the Steel Pins," a slogan borrowed from Donald Trump's supporters. Now, thousands are rallying against what they call a corrupt establishment. Meanwhile, the government has deployed some 14,000 police officers, 14,000 police officers in Seoul to prevent the unrest in the city, in the capital city. The security has been tightened around the constitutional courts, subway stations have been closed, and drone activity has been banned in the sensitive areas. With this, South Korea now faces an urgent yet deeply challenging task, the task of electing a new leader. The election scheduled within 60 days will take place in an environment of extreme distrust. Public confidence in institutions has eroded. Over a third of South Koreans now say they do not trust constitutional courts, and more than a quarter doubt the integrity of the complete electoral system in the country. The next president will need to unify a fractured country while also navigating global economic and diplomatic challenges. Key among them is dealing with US President Donald Trump, who recently imposed some 25% tariffs on South Korean steel and aluminium, and that has already hurt the Korea's economy. There is also growing concern that Trump will demand higher defense payments from South Korea while seeking direct engagements with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, his best buddy. Although Yoon's impeachment is a victory for South Korean democracy, it has exposed deep divisions in the society. Calls are already growing to amend the constitution to prevent the future power grabs or future misuse of power by the presidents. However, such reforms will require strong political will, and it remains uncertain whether South Korea's next leader will prioritize them or not. As the country prepares for a new election, one thing is clear, that South Korea is at a turning point. The decisions made in this coming month, in this coming election, will shape its democratic future, its economy, and global standing for the years to come. An Israeli airstrike on the Dal al-Akram school in Gaza City has killed at least 27 Palestinians, including women and children, according to Gaza's health ministry. Dozens more were injured in the attack, which struck the hospital that was sheltering the displaced families. The Israeli military, however, claimed it targeted a Hamas command center, but did not acknowledge striking a school. This incident is a part of Israel's broader offensive in Gaza, which intensified after the collapse of a temporary ceasefire in the March. The IDF states it has struck over 600 terrorist targets, and eliminated more than 250 militants in the recent weeks. However, civilian casualties have been splurged, with the UN reporting over 1,100 deaths in past 2 weeks alone, and this includes hundreds of children. The humanitarian impact of this ongoing conflict is staggering. The UN estimates that 1 lakh Palestinians have been displaced in the latest wave of attacks. Videos from Gaza show children being rushed to hospital, and reports indicate that entire families have been wiped out. With limited access to medical care, food and clean water, the humanitarian crisis is worsening by the day. Every day the situation is getting much worse. Hospitals are overwhelmed, struggling with the shortage of medical supplies and electricity, further escalating the suffering of the injured. Israel argues that military pressure is necessary to dismantle Hamas infrastructure and force the release of hostages. However, Hamas has refused Israel's latest ceasefire proposal, insisting on a truce that includes political exchange of prisoners and humanitarian aid as well. The negotiations remain deadlocked, prolonging the suffering of civilians that are caught in the crossfire. Meanwhile, ongoing Israeli evacuation orders have forced tens of thousands of people to flee their homes, adding to the already dire displacement crisis. The airstrike highlighting the devastating consequences of urban warfare in densely populated areas like Gaza. While Israel asserts that it takes precautions to avoid civilian casualties, incidents like these fuels allegations of indiscriminate attacks. It doesn't seem like they take care. The UN, United Nations, has raised concerns over possible war crimes, especially after the recent killing of 15 humanitarian workers in Rafah. The situation also raises critical questions about the proportionality in warfare and the ethical implication of striking civilian infrastructure. On the other hand, Israel continues to face the complex challenge of neutralizing Hamas while dealing with international scrutiny. The lack of a clear post-war strategy raises concerns about whether these military actions will bring lasting security or merely deepen the cycle of violence. The continued suffering of civilians, particularly children, adds pressure on global leaders to intervene and push for diplomatic solutions, not attacks. Ultimately, the human cost of this conflict remains unacceptable. Without a diplomatic breakthrough, both sides seem locked in an endless war, with civilians paying the highest price. The international community must push for a resolution that prioritizes humanitarian relief and a substantial part to peace, or the cycle of violence will only persist. Prime Minister Modi met Bangladesh's interim chief advisor Modi-Yunus on the sidelines of BIMSTEC Bay of Bengal initiative for multi-sectoral technical and economic cooperation summit, and it was held in Bangkok, Thailand on Friday. This marked their first interaction since the ousting of Bangladesh's former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in August 2024, and she came to India. During the meeting, Modi raised concerns over the safety and security of minorities in Bangladesh, particularly Hindus, since Yunus took over the charge of the country. India's Ministry of External Affairs MEA spokesperson Randhir Jaiswal stated, and I quote him here, "The Prime Minister underlined India's concerns related to the security of minorities in Bangladesh and has expressed his expectations that the government of Bangladesh would ensure their protection, including by investigating cases of violence against them." This is an important statement that has come from the Department of External Affairs. Bangladesh has witnessed widespread unrest and the violent demonstrations shaking the entire country. The situation has worsened the diplomatic relations between the two countries after Hasina sought refuge in India, in our country, leaving Dhaka to demand her extradition to face the corruption charges in Bangladesh. Yunus reportedly pressed Modi on this issue as well. Jaiswal confirmed discussions took place, saying, and I quote him here again, "We received a request on this matter, but it would not be appropriate to comment further." This is what he said on this matter. Other critical issues discussed including the long-pending Teesta water sharing treaty and recent border clashes between India and Bangladesh, which have occasionally resulted in fatalities. You see, Bangladesh has long sought an agreement on Teesta water distribution, but this whole thing was oppositioned by the West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, and this has stalled the progress. Earlier, Yunus's office shared images of meeting on social media platform, posting Chief Advisor Professor Modi-Yunus and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi join a bilateral meeting on the sidelines of the 6th BIMSTEC summit in Bangkok, Thailand. Yunus also gifted Modi a framed photograph of their interaction at the 102nd Indian Science Congress in 2015. Interestingly, the two leaders were seated next to each other at the BIMSTEC leaders' dinner on Thursday night, just hours before their official talks. The meeting followed Yunus's controversial statement that Northeast India is deadlocked and the Bangladesh is the only guardian of the ocean for this region. The remark sparked criticism from India, particularly from External Affairs Minister S. Shankar, who emphasized the region's growing connectivity and access to the Pacific via infrastructure projects like Trilateral Highway. Bangladesh had repeatedly requested a bilateral meeting between Modi and Yunus, but our country's capital, New Delhi, remained non-committal until today. Now they have met finally. The MEA is expected to hold a press conference briefly later, further providing details on this matter. The Trump administration has removed General Timothy Harf, head of both the National Security Agency NSA and US Cyber Command, as a part of a broader purge of national security officials. His deputy, Wendy Noble, was also dismissed. While no official reason has been given, the move follows a meeting between President Donald Trump and a far-right activist, Laura Loomer, who reportedly urged Trump to fire officials she viewed as disloyal. The firings extend beyond the NSA. At least 3 officials from the White House National Security Council, which is called as NSC, has also been removed. Among them are Brian Walsh, Director of Intelligence, Thomas Boudreau, Senior Director for Legislative Affairs, and David Feith, Senior Director overseeing technology and national security. Very big names. Sources suggest these officials have previously criticized Trump or had ties to Republican figures that Trump disliked. Now, Trump defended the dismissals, telling reporters aboard Air Force One, and I quote, "We are always going to let go of people who may have loyalties elsewhere." This is what he said to the reporters. Meanwhile, Loomer claimed responsibility for the firings, posting on social media that Harf and Noble were removed because they were disloyal to President Donald Trump. This is what she said, disloyal to President Donald Trump. These removals raise serious questions about political interference in national security. While every administration has the right to appoint personnel aligned with their agenda, the direct influence of a far-right activist like Loomer, who has no formal security background, is unprecedented. Her ability to sway high-level decisions suggests that ideological loyalty is being prioritized over the national security expertise. Democratic leaders have strongly condemned the move. Congressman Jim Himes, ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, calls Harf, and I quote, "an honest and foresighted leader," and warned that his removal could weaken US intelligence operations. But seems like loyalty is more important. Critics argue that these firings could compromise national security by polarizing and prioritizing political loyalties over qualifications and experience. This is a big concern. Additionally, the firings come after a recent NSC scandal where officials mistakenly added a journalist to a classified signal chat group discussing military strikes in Yemen. Although Harf was not involved, this incident reportedly triggered an internal investigation into staffers. Some believe that this provided the administration a pretext for removing officials who were not viewed as sufficiently loyal to the Donald Trump. With Trump's administration tightening control over security personnel, question remains, an eminent question, an important question remains about the long-term impact of US intelligence. As Trump continues to rely on figures like Loomer, who is a far-right activist for advances and the advices concern grow over whether national security is being compromised for personal or political gains. And that's all I have for you on the show tonight. I will see you on Monday. Take care and good night.